Flowers. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Florida. Alderwoman.
I'll ask everybody to hold it down so that she can get through the roll call. Madam Clerk, please continue.
Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmid. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman French. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderwoman Cruzen. 22 present.
Quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by Reverend Dr. Willie Eugene Marshall from St. James AME.
Let us pray. O God, creator of everything, we do give you all of the praise and honor. We lift up now in fervent prayer for all 28 of the representing boards of aldermen and for the people of each ward for the city of St. Louis. We pray that you will continue to give them more servant leadership, wisdom, knowledge, and the integrity to work together for the good of all, and to hear and follow the commands of God as they carry out the responsibility of this valuable task given to them as elected officials. Therefore, God, we ask that you will continue to bless the city, the people, and its leadership on all levels. In his name's sake we pray, amen.
That was a good prayer. We'll suspend with our regular order of business, take up our courtesy resolution. Can I move for adoption of courtesy resolution? Can I entertain a second on that motion? Seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Alderman from the 7th would like to approach the dais.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Many of you know that over the holidays, we lost a valued member of the city's staff. Pat Bannister was a person who was very active in all our wards, bringing businesses here, and he knew that the core of the city depended upon active business development. He knew that in order to support our city, we needed the revenues from those businesses. He knew that in order to support our constituents and have them support their families, we needed those jobs that would be provided by those businesses. Many of us didn't know that we had lost Pat until we came back from the holiday. And when we did, we were very, very upset about that. because Pat meant a lot to each of us. As we drive through our wards, we know what businesses he was a part of bringing into being and what jobs were expanded. The guy just knew everybody and everything. He knew how to put pieces together to make those deals work. And so we have invited the family of Pat here today to present to them a resolution honoring Pat and honoring his memory and thanking them for the many hours that they allowed him to share with us. And I could read this resolution, but I'm not sure I'd do it so well. And I think it might be best that we just pass this resolution to Pat's family and say thank you for the many years of service he provided to us all.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 17th.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I was really pleased when the Alderwoman from the 7th decided to sponsor this. I can't think of anything that would be, anyone that it would be more appropriate to do something for like that. As I frequently say, am a bit of a legacy, and as a legacy, my father, who was down here, I inherited a lot of tradition as well as advice and everything. And when I came to work for the city, I didn't realize this, but my dad and Pat's father were actually good friends. And I think my dad served as a pallbearer in his funeral. And when I came down here, I had this kind of warm reception from this guy, Pat Bannister, and then from his sister, who I didn't even realize was his sister at the time, who was at the time working down here as well. And so I inherited that kind of friendship, and or at least warm reception. I'd like to think that it developed in a friendship naturally on its own as time went on. But it was certainly a very warm and comforting feeling that I got from someone who I really didn't know before I came down here. When I did come down here, I was very fortunate in having a ward that's been very active, and it's kind of a story, kind of fun. My dad would work as the alderman, and then many of the businesses that were out in our ward were family businesses, and they would be handed down from one generation to the next generation. And I would, 40, 50 years after my dad was elected, be getting calls from people asking them to expand, and they would have known us, our family, because their father had actually worked with my dad on their last expansion, and now it was time to go ahead and get the alley closed. I would get these calls, and they would say, "Joe, what do we do?" And I would say, well, there's somebody who really knows much more about this stuff than I do, and his name is Pat Bannister. And just about the time I got to that point, I'd hear on the voice on the other end of the line going, "I know Pat. I worked with him when," or "my dad worked with him when," and they go, "Great guy to work with, Joe, I can take it from here," and they would call Pat Bannister. And over the years, that had happened countless times. It's the business community was just, Pat was everywhere, and they all knew him, and they all had wonderful things to say about him. He was always accommodating, never pretentious, and very much a can-do guy, and he was just really, really wonderful to work with. And that's Pat, but the rest of the family's down here, and the Bannister family is one of those families that, is perhaps not a household name in St. Louis, and, they weren't a U.S. senator or mayor, they didn't own a Fortune 500 company, but so many of them have gone on and have become an important part of the social fabric of our city, whether it's their involvement at St. Louis University, St. Louis U High, in the real estate community, and just have, everywhere they go, they have done important things, and they have been so involved in the community. And, it's a wonderful family tradition, and I've been very, very fortunate and delighted in knowing their acquaintance. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th.
Mr. President, I would agree with what much of Alderman Rhodey had said. Just saw an article last week about Local Harvest and how they were going bankrupt and closing up a very trendy place in South St. Louis because they'd lost so much money trying to open up in Kirkwood or Webster Groves because of the permitting processes, and it set them back 6 or 9 months. And that was the difference doing business here in the city. Even though we get a bad rap, I mean, I never had a problem when I could call Pat and say, this business wants to locate here, can you help them? He would help these businesses come in and overcome all of these negative connotations of how hard it is to do business in the city, because it wasn't. And it was a classic example of the Local Harvest. But Pat helped a lot of businesses in the 8th Ward, and then business associates that would come to me, and say, well, I'd like to get in on Washington or Broadway or whatever. And I just say 622-3400, hit 0, ask for Pat Bannister, and I guarantee you he'll take you. And always got positive back. And he was effective for the city, which meant effective for the taxpayers and revenues and jobs here in the city of St. Louis. He did a great job for us, and thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from 11th.
Morning, Mr. President. I miss the Alderman from the 13th already. He used to adjust this thing. He was, in fact, good for something. Mr. President, the Villas and the Bannisters go back a long, long way. I will not bore the assembled multitude, but Pat Bannister's father, Del Bannister, back when this body had a picnic, as I look around, I don't know certainly the Alderman from the 17th's dad, but Mr. President, it was some picnic. And Del Bannister, it was held in Jefferson County now, House Springs, Missouri. The Alderman from the 12th has been there. It was our family clubhouse. And where I'm going with this is Del Bannister, the dad, Pat's dad, was former collector of revenue, correct, for the city of St. Louis? But my father would put him in charge of ICE. And so his job was to, in those days, the Board of Aldermen paid for nothing, Mr. President. So it was, Red Bella would tell Del Bannister that he was in charge of ICE. And I feel fairly confident that Mr. Bannister had connections at Metropolitan Sewer District. So he would pull up to the clubhouse, which was, some 25 miles away in a little miniature Pontiac something, and he did not drive that well. And it was a gravel lot. But where I'm going with this, the aldermanic picnics never ran out of ice. We had, I think, more ice at Rumpus Ridge than Sochi has snow. It was, but just fond memories of those guys that kind of understood this business, kept it simpler. They were simpler times. It was a different city. But the apple did not fall too far from the tree. I was privileged to be able to attend the funeral mass of Pat over at St. Louis University High School. It was held in their gymnasium, which in itself was virtually jammed. And it was a real fitting tribute to just a fine young man. I'm sitting here looking at Gorla. Gorla, good morning. That's your maiden name, isn't it, Gorla? That's right. So at any rate, I think the entire family, Kathleen Brady, who is to my right, Mr. President, as I look at the dais, certainly was instrumental, one of the few people that on rare occasions understood the late former Mayor Schamel, and was very, very instrumental in, quite frankly, redoing the entire central core of our city as it relates to Midtown St. Louis. I think Kathleen had Mr. Sulman on speed dial when it came to streets and signage and whatever else. So the bottom line, this is a family that are neat people, committed to the city of St. Louis, gave a great deal back, and all the members, certainly Pat's kids, you should be very, very proud of your dad and what he did for us. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? I also want to add to everything that's been said. Pat was one of the first people I met when I got into public office. We had a lot of development issues all across the 6th Ward, businesses that were looking to come into the ward, some businesses that said, hey, we can get a better deal someplace else. So when I came in office, I had an opportunity to meet Pat. The first thing they did was to send me over there to talk to him. And it struck me as I sat across the table from him how calm he was and how humble he was. So when you think about Pat, it's hard not to think about how calm he was, even amidst whatever else was going on, and how humble he was. The city will miss him. His fingerprints are on buildings and businesses from end to end all across this city. I know it has taken a lot of time out of your family personally, because the job he did for us had to take more than just an 8 hours to complete. So I know that. So I want to, on behalf of the city, thank you for giving up that time that we had with him. We will miss Pat. This resolution is the highest honor this board has to give. And what it does, it cements in time some of the many contributions that your husband and your father gave to this city in his time here. So 100, 200 years from now, when you research the records of the city of St. Louis, they'll be able to read about this meeting. And they will be able to read that we paused in our deliberations today to congratulate and thank and to honor Pat's contributions to this city. And I cannot thank you enough. From me, my family and friends, for other people all across the city and businesses that would not be existent today without him being involved. So thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. We certainly appreciate it, and we know that Pat's looking down on us, and he's truly honored today. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolution calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. With that, we'll return to our regular order of business. Introduction of honored guests. Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have from the Carpenters District Council, Keith Taylor, Mark Dalton, Jeff Hans. From Fire, Percy Green, Al from Firefighter 73, and Celeste from the Realtors.
Alderman from the 14th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I would like to have as my very honored guest Senator Harry Kennedy from the 14th Ward. He serves as committeeman. Gary Otten from the Painters District Council 2. Anthony Lancia from AGC, David Holmes, Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Gina Hannaworth from the Laclede Group, and Leroy Grant from AT&T.
Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Ronnie Auer and Joe Steiger from St. Louis Police Officers Association.
Alderman from the 8th.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. It's my honor this morning to have one of my constituents, Peter Meredith, with us today. He's a young lawyer that cut his teeth working with Dave Richardson, a lifelong resident of the Shaw neighborhood, a member of the 8th Ward Independent Democrats, and on the Garden District Board. He's very involved, and so is his family in our neighborhood. But this morning with me, I do have Peter Meredith.
Any further? Alderman from the 22nd. Moved on me.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest this morning, Mr. Leroy Grant with Grant Communications.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, good morning. As we're here on February 7th, this day in 1964 when the Beatles first arrived in America, and thus forever changing the haircut of the alderman from the 8th.
I like that one. Approval of the minutes, Alderman from the 17th. Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on approval of the minutes. Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Yes, Mr. President, I move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes.
We will dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would dispense with line items 8 through 10, first reading board bills.
Board Bill 295, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the First Amendment to the Fuel System Lease and Use Agreement between the City and STL Fuel Company, LLC, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 296, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended by the Airport Commissioner, Board of Public Service, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into an executed agreement and a contract of sale between St. Louis, the owner and operator of Lambert Airport, and Memorial Tabernacle Baptist Church, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into and execute the quitclaim deed, the purchase price of $12,500, and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 297, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller on behalf of the city of St. Louis, the owner and operator of Lambert Airport, to accept and execute certain airport aid agreement offered by the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for the design of a new west cargo ramp at the airport for a maximum obligation of $365,068, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 298, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert St. Louis Airport Ground Transportation Concession Agreement AL 322 between the city and Best Transportation Incorporated, and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 299, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Second Amendment to the East Terminal Agency Agreement between the City and Airport Terminal Services Incorporated, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 300, sponsored by Alderwoman Flowers, an ordinance recommended by and authorizing, directing the Board of Public Service to provide for a building, facility, and equipment improvements to the waterworks system of the City Water Division by projects approved by the Water Revenue Bonds to appropriate and pay the estimated cost of $8 million from the Waterworks contingent account containing sections for a description of work, the mayor's executive orders, contract advertising statutes, and a public work emergency clause. Board Bill 301, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3015 Indiana redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 302, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 1941 Cherokee redevelopment area containing a severability clause. Board Bill 303, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3300 Illinois redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 304, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3949 Castleman redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 305, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3430 Hartford redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 306, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3846 Botanical redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 307, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3411 Wyoming redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 308, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for Gravois Avenue and Merrimack Street redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 309, sponsored by Alderwoman Tyus, an ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently unlicensed premises within the boundaries of the First Ward, containing an exception allowing during the moratorium period for the transfer of existing licenses under certain circumstances and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 310, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute upon receipt of and in consideration the sum of $500, a quitclaim deed to remise, release, and forever quit claim to SLLC Real Estate LLC, a certain city-owned parcel located in City Block 3953. Board Bill 311, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Chief of Police on behalf of the mayor and the City of St. Louis to enter into and execute a grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to fund the 2013 Port Security Grant Program upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and to expend funds by entering into contracts or otherwise for grant purposes and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of our first readings.
Reference to committee.
To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bills 309 and 311. To the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 310. To the Public Utilities Committee, Board Bill 300. To the Housing Committee, Board Bill 308. To the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bills 295, 296, 297, 298, and 299. And to the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bills 301, 302, 303, 304, 305, 306, and 307. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Second reading.
The following board bill was brought out of the Legislation Committee, Board Bill 286, sponsored by Alderwoman Behringer, an ordinance intended to eliminate, reduce, and remedy discrimination in housing, employment, education, services, public accommodations, and real property transactions and uses, and to provide equal opportunity enforcement, and containing a severability clause. That's the extent of our second readings.
We will dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 266, sponsored by Alderman Williamson, an ordinance authorizing the treasurer to enter into the amended and restated Missouri Securities Investment Program Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement and containing an effective date. Board Bill 88, sponsored by Aldermen and Alderwomen Cone, Flowers, Carter, Vaccaro, Ingracia, Arnowitz, and Kennedy, an ordinance pertaining to the collection of funds to assist in the city's effort to support the restoration of St. Louis City Hall, authorizing the comptroller to establish the City Hall Restoration Fund to help provide needed repairs and restoration to St. Louis City Hall. Board Bill 290, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance authorizing, directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into and execute one or more amended and restated redevelopment agreements with respect to the Downtown Convention Center Hotel, terminating the St. Louis Convention Center Hotel Community Improvement District, approving a petition for the establishment of the St. Louis Convention Center Hotel 2 Community Improvement Districts, and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause. Board Bill 271, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance authorizing and directing the street commissioner to take all necessary actions to honorarily designate Pine Street between 4th Street and Broadway, Bill Anderson Way. Board Bill 283, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to vacate travel on Dillon from Carroll northwardly 140 feet to a point previously vacated in City Block 1250 and 1251 in the city. Board Bill 249, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance establishing a stop sign for all eastbound and westbound traffic traveling on Maurice Avenue at Leola, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 278, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on the remaining 149.30 feet of the 20-foot wide north-south alley in City Block 603, bounded by Malamphy, vacated ordinance 49626 9th Street, Cass, and 10th Street. Board Bill 284, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to vacate travel in Duncan from Vanderventer westwardly and the 15-foot wide east-west alley in City Block 3918 West is bounded by Forest Park Avenue, Vanderventer, Duncan, and Sarah in the city. Board Bill 287, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on the easternmost east-west alley in City Block 2102, bounded by Arsenal, Grand, Hartford, and Spring in the city. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we perfect and consent.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We also have with us our license collector and her staff members. Could you stand? So let's welcome her today as our honor guest. We dispense with line item 16. Alderman from the 22nd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to move to suspend the rules for the purpose of moving the following board bills to the third reading consent calendar. Board Bill 266, Board Bill 88, 290 Committee Substitute, 271, 283, 249, 278, 284, and Board Bill 287.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyers. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Florida. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman French. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Carter. 23 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from the 22nd. Madam Clerk, please place the aforementioned bills to the tail end of the third reading consent calendar.
So noted.
Third reading consent.
Board Bills 268, 229, floor substitute, 266, 88, 290, committee substitute, 271, 283, 249, 278, 284, and 287.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we third read and consent.
It's moved by the Alderman from the 17th. I entertain a second on the motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyers. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Florida. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmid. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Carter. 22 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 17th and third read and finally pass the aforementioned bills. We'll dispense with line item 18, report of enrollment committee.
Board Bills 268, 229, floor substitute, 266, 88, Board Bill 88, 290, committee substitute, 271, 283, 249, 278, 284, and 287.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. First reading resolutions.
Resolution 222, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis and Alderwoman Ingracia. The Board of Aldermen approves the 2014 Locust Central Special Business District budget.
Alderman from the 19th, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 222.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I ask for unanimous consent to move this board bill number 222.
Hearing no objection, please proceed, Alderman.
This is a simple resolution that acknowledges the budget that has been prepared to operate the Locust Business District for this year, 2014. I renew my motion.
No, would you like to make a motion?
I made a motion. I make a motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 19th to approve resolution number 222. Entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st. Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 223, sponsored by Aldermen and Alderwomen Moore, Tyus, Bosley, Kennedy, French, Williamson, and Carter. The Board of Aldermen directs the city to prominently display the red, black, and green at and in and outside of City Hall each year during the month of February.
Alderman from the 4th, you recognize on the first reading resolution number 223.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for unanimous consent to move Board Bill 223.
Hearing no objection to unanimous consent, would you like to make a motion for the passage of resolution?
No, I'm not passing it. I'm just going.
You want to move it to committee?
Yes, sir.
All right. You want to make a motion? Just make a motion that it be assigned to whatever committee you want it to
I make
assign.
a motion that we assign it to rules, encroachment, and rules.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th that we assign resolution number 223 to rules and engrossments. It's been seconded by the Alderman from 26. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. Mr. President,
okay.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of first reading of resolutions.
Second reading.
The following resolution was reported out of the Streets Committee, Resolution 200, sponsored by Alderwomen and Aldermen Tyus, French, Bosley, Moore, Williamson, and President Reed. The Board of Aldermen directs the Streets Committee to convene hearings for the purpose of examining and investigating the events and circumstances surrounding the recent snow removal program.
Alderman from the 1st, you recognize on the second reading on resolution number 200.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to pass resolution 200.
Moved by the Alderman from the 1st. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from 26. Alderwoman, please proceed.
Mr. President, members of the board, we had a very good discussion yesterday. So for people who had problems with the resolution, I think we were able to straighten people out. This is a resolution not directed of any kind of assessment of blame. It's a resolution where we can get information about what we can best do with storms. You know, we decided that we have a little subcommittee in which we are going to bring people in to the hearings to talk about, for instance, who cleans off the bus stops. What about accessibility? Alderman Boyd brought up about the schools and things. So we have a list. Alderman Boyd, Williamson, and myself are a little subcommittee, and we're putting this together. And we also decided to go out into the community and have public hearings to let the public. I saw some small business people that were on TV who had some concerns. So we want to hear what the constituents who are stakeholders have to say about what we can best do to serve them. And so we ended up with everyone but one person voting for the resolution. And I believe this is a good resolution of how to work together and to make sure that we have all branches of government on the same page. And I'd ask, I renew my motion to pass resolution 200.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 1st and Alderman from the 22nd. You had some discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to add my name as a co-sponsor of the resolution.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderman from the 26th. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Florida. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Alderman Schmid. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman French. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Carter. "19 aye votes, no votes, 3 present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Alderwoman from the first and adopted resolution number 200.
That's the extent of second reading of resolutions, committee reports, and adoption.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, Ways and Means Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers, and also on Friday, Fit for Life will be here, and they will be having massages or doing massages during and after the board meeting in the leisure room for the alderman, staff, president's office and staff, and the mayor's office and staff. That's the extent of my announcements.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from 22nd.
Members of the board, we will have a rules and engrossment hearing on Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the leisure room.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Any further? Alderman from the 6th.
And members of the board, I just wanted to recognize our 6th Ward Democratic Chair, Robin Wright-Jones, who has joined us, as well as our 6th Ward Committeeman, Damon Jones.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Alderwoman. I forgot to announce. Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, I just want to announce that a number of women have on red today. I'm glad to see that because today is National Heart Day, and that's in recognition that heart disease kills more women than all the cancers put together. And about 10 years ago, they started a movement that we wear red to recognize the importance of women getting their hearts checked out and having proper checkups. And so I'm in my red today in recognition of all the women who fight heart disease.
All right, thank you for that, Alderwoman. And I'm wearing my red today. My daughter's 26 years old, and she had to have heart surgery 2 months ago. And she's going to have to go through one more, but we need to all recognize and understand how significant that is, and do everything we can do to support it.
Our prayers are with your daughter.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I just have a few things I want to acknowledge. First, I'd like to thank TV 10. They have produced a document in your ward for the 19th ward that I have never had constituents call about something before, but they're very appreciative. They believe it represents their community well, and so I just want to thank them for a job well done. Also, I wanted to offer you to come to a new establishment, Bailey Small Batch, It's open on the corner of Locust and Garrison in the 19th Ward. As you know, they have a number of restaurants in the region, and we're very happy to have one now there. I also like to ask those who are interested to support the Community College Foundation fundraiser, which is tomorrow at the Four Seasons Hotel, and they have this fabulous 5-course dinner with wine pairings to each course, so it's quite exciting. I'd also like to congratulate all of the young leaders who are going to be honored at the St. Louis Americans event on Thursday at the Four Seasons from 5 to 7:30. If you have the opportunity, the tickets are very inexpensive, so try to go and support these young people who are very active in our community, and we want to encourage them and keep them in our region. Also, tomorrow night, Lift Every Voice and Sing. There are a few tickets left at the Symphony, and for those who don't know, Jennifer Holliday is the singer that has been commissioned to come in for that event. And lastly, I don't want to forget, tomorrow, Dr. Christy Griffin has put together a panel of people, and her topic is From Rosewood to O'Fallon, and she's talking about the community of O'Fallon. But she's looking at the black wealth in America and how it goes from Wall Street and the many other different tentacles that take you out as you move forward in life. So it's at the Schlafly Library, set tomorrow from 2 to 4 p.m. And if you have a chance, I think it's going to be a very, very good discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any for Alderman from the 17th?
Yes, Mr. President. Last week I was celebrating my wife and my anniversary, and so I went to a warm place and took a little mini vacation, so I wasn't here. And I understand that in my absence, one of our farmer colleagues had a couple comments to make. And I felt it was remiss not to remind him that now I have the speaker like for a long time, and he doesn't have access to that. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge Fred in his retirement. For a long time, I would tease him about taking housing from him when he retired, and encouraged him that I hope his health was okay. But one of the great pleasures I have had down here is doing economic development and getting new buildings built. And for most of my time down here, Fred was chairman of that committee, was very supportive and very constructive in everything that we did in the 17th Ward. And I owe a great deal to him for his leadership. And while I love taking the committee from him, I will miss his counsel because he is someone's opinion who I greatly respect. So I wanted to say that. And I also want to make a second announcement. The Alderman from the 10th is so good at giving us history notes every week. I wanted to recognize that 1967, 47 years ago, the movie Cool Hand Luke came out, and one of the great phrases of that movie was, "What we have here is a failure to communicate."
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I decided that last time I was here 2 weeks ago, I went ahead and I talked about the fact that I hadn't gotten a call back from the mayor's chief of staff, and while I was on vacation, my mind was with you back here, and I want to let everybody know that I took my phone down to the beach with me every day, waiting for the mayor's chief of staff to call me up so I could meet with him, and I never got that call, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to report every week, and we'll go ahead and we'll see how long it takes for us to go ahead and approve our failure to communicate. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm sure you'll get that call this afternoon, Alderman. We also have Richard Gray, the new Public Safety Director. Could you please stand up? Thank you for joining us today, and welcome. We're all looking forward to working with you in your new role. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 17th, you reckon? Well, Alderman from the 4th, you have an announcement? You're good. Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, I move that we excuse the Alderman from the 3rd, the 21st, and the 24th wards.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from the 17th, you're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn this august Board of Aldermen until February the 14th.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded over here by the Alderman from the 11th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.